want to touch on DC and how the National Guard is absolutely taking over DC. And they have already removed 3 entrapment camps of homelessness. My thing is, how do you crack down on homelessness without providing resources as shelters, okay, where these unsheltered people can then have a roof over their head and really have programs in place that can rehabilitate them so they can be working citizens of America? Because again, we're talking about American citizens here. Now, some of them have gotten their positions because of bad investments. Some of them have probably have some sort of addiction with alcohol and drugs. And I don't want to get into the addictions because, again, DC is still majority Black. I think it's 43% Black. Then the next population of race is white people, I think around 36, 37%. And then you have other people from different races, ethnics, and so on that live in the nation's capital. But Black Americans are still the majority population in Washington, D.C. But if not only we the majority population, but we're also the majority of homeless people in that area. And I don't want to get into COINTELPRO. I don't want to get into how the 3-letter and 4-letter agencies, allegedly the CIA, FBI, and other, again, infuse Black neighborhoods around the nation, even the nation's capital, with crack cocaine, with cocaine itself, and how, again, another tool in the white supremacy's tool bag to decimate, to devastate, and to delete Black people on a very, very large scale. Because then you'll have your white adjacent, you'll have your white supremacists, those who benefit from the system of white supremacy state, that, oh, you're just making excuses because people don't want to work and they strung out on drugs and this is what they want to do. See, if we look at the 2 drug epidemics in America, the crack epidemic and the opioid epidemic, the crack epidemic was a crackdown on thugs and drug dealers and gangsters and pushers. How did the drugs get into America? I digress. We already know that story. Again, I just said those 3 and 4-letter agencies. Number 2, who was pushing opioids and writing bad pharmaceutical notes? So drug dealers, drug pushers, drug promoters, okay, because you had a lot of these drug companies had representatives to go down and promote these opioids. And the majority of the population of people who were addicted to opioids were white people. But instead of having a criminal crackdown, incarcerating the doctors, the pharmaceutical companies, as well as the people who were doing the drugs like they did crack cocaine, they used government resources to assist these people with these addictions. You see, there is a duplicitous contradiction of the 2 drug epidemics in America. I digress, because I do want to go a little bit deeper on this, because if we begin with the origins of policing in America, yep, I'm going back. And then we emphasize that the first police system in the U.S. evolved from slave patrols, organized force meant to control and terrorize Black Americans in this country and not protect the citizens. This isn't a debatable footnote. It is foundational to American law enforcement, particularly in the southern states where it originally started. Now, believe it or not, Washington, D.C. is below the Mason-Dixon line, so it is considered the South, even though most people look at it as the North. And I want you guys to trace how early American policing mechanisms were rooted in safeguarding landowners and assets, not the welfare of Black or working class communities. And if we fast forward, today's aggressive policing in Black majority areas of DC reflects those origins, systems built to regulate rather than to uplift. So much for protect and serve. Protect and serve who? Who are you protecting and serving? Now, this is really not geared, okay, even though it encompasses the police and the National Guard, because, again, this is by the orders of the president. And we can really highlight how media and public energy center around these certain areas and how we have Gaza and Ukraine and the solidarity marches and the viral social posts and the fundraising campaigns for these countries and how American citizens support these other countries. And I speak about these all the time. Meanwhile, In Washington, D.C., Black residents face escalating militarization neglected by the institutions meant to serve them. We want to crack down on crime. Why is there high crime in the nation's capital? Why is there high crime in America compared to other European nations? Why? Again, the majority of the people in America, right, Europeans, they come from Europe. They're descendants of Europeans. So that's why, in some regards, America is a European nation. They're not located in Europe. I got it. But we understand the construction and the exception and how America was started. So I want you guys to really look at this. Because in this month, President Trump evoked Section 740 of the Home Rule Act to assume control of the Metropolitan Police Department, which is a historical first, and federalize them. He also deployed 800 plus and soon to be more National Guard troops that are coming from West Virginia, South Carolina, as well as Ohio. Now, as you see in one of these pictures, and I'll show this very quickly here, some of the troops are unarmed depending on where they are. This is the reflecting pool. Okay, you have the monument there that you see in the picture, and then on the opposite side, you have the Lincoln Memorial. But the streets of D.C. are now being militarized. And Trump framed the operation as necessary to quell crime, to stop bloodshed and bedlam and squalor. But data shows violent crime in D.C. is at a 30-year low. I remember when D.C. was a murder capital of the United States of America. Now, that was some quite times ago. I believe that was in the late 80s as well as the mid 90s. Again, that's nothing to hang your hat on. A lot of senseless crime and unaliving of a lot of people. But we're at a 30-year low, ladies and gentlemen. And we have other states and cities where higher crime, much higher crime than DC. Oh, it's the nation's capital. They should have zero crime. No country in the world has zero crime. No nation's capital, no country's capital have zero crime. But it's just way too much. And critics label this federal intervention as political motivated authoritarian overreach. Now, in alignment with this crackdown, the Interior Department adopted a no tolerance policy for homeless encampments in D.C. There should be no homeless encampments in D.C., which is federal land that was given to create a federal state. Land by Maryland and land by Virginia was given. That's why on a lot of accords, when you're traveling in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, some areas in Maryland, you have to go through DC to get to Virginia and vice versa. Now, to provide more context on the entrapment camps, and when we're referencing a lot of the homelessness in DC, roughly 75 camps were cleared near landmarks like the Lincoln Memorial, and advocates warned that dispersal uproots individuals from crucial support networks, healthcare, family services without any valuable refuge. And many have nowhere to go. DC's shelter system is overstretched, mental health beds are scarce, and Medicaid red tape delays access for those without insurance. This is why they are in these areas, unfortunately, to beg, to ask tourists that can't come to DC for money so they can feed themselves. And some of you, again, I know you're going to say, oh, to get more drugs and more alcohol. Okay. I'm pretty sure that's what some of them are doing as well. I'm not oblivious. But nonetheless, 75 camps were removed. And again, as I stated, some states with higher crime rates remain unmilitarized, for instance. No similar federal intervention in cities in the Midwest or South, despite similar or worse statistics. Now, as commentators note, Trump's rhetoric echoes a legacy of racist condemnation of Black-led or progressive cities, framing them as disorderly to justify heavy-handed federal control. And I know what some people are going to say, oh, this is not racial. President Trump has taken picture with P. Diddy. No, Diddy. He's taking pictures with Jay-Z, and he's talking about all these famous people. Famous people always take pictures with other famous people who are rich. Okay. And a lot of these pictures were taken at parties and events. But now we're looking at President Trump on a national scale. And the reason why I stated that it's difficult for him to do this is because other places have autonomy from the federal government in some regards, because they have senators, they have congressmen, they can go to the Supreme Court to stop any takeover of jurisdictions from President Trump. And he knows this. So again, when I look at this, when I look at the takeover of the nation's capital, and then I look at the amount of foreign aid that's given to other countries, and the contrast of how billions flow to international causes, even as DC's Black communities face housing crisis and systematic negligence. The displaced need permanent housing, mental health care, job opportunities, and community investment, not patrols and show of force tactics. See, we can rally for the world, ladies and gentlemen. And that is what we've been doing for a very long time. We've been rallying for the world. We've been speaking out against the atrocities against Ukraine and Russia. We're talking about how, the Palestinians in Gaza are being treated by Israel, and how those things need to stop. Even the citizens of Israel are now crying out. So we can rally for the world all we want. But what about here in the United States of America? We can fund war-torn nations and help them to rebuild. But what about the Black hearts and homes of people in DC? See, I believe it's time that we care just as deeply and more about who we already are. Whatever happened to America first? Maybe I need to modify just a little bit. Maybe just a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to figure out, how would I modify America first? America first, except when it includes Black Americans.